What's up, YouTube? So today I have an amazing guest on the Talking Cards podcast. I have Bill with me. Bill, first of all, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. I feel like I should have done this episode back in the day, not right now, but I don't think it's too late. And this should be an amazing conversation about vintage. Bill is a top collector on that market. But make an introduction for my viewers and welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for the invite. Very happy to be here.
No, my pleasure again. But yeah, tells us a bit your story for people that may not know you, how long you've been collecting. Even though the first question is actually related with that, and I guess I can start with the first question since it goes into your story in the hobby. So when you actually started collecting soccer and the reasons behind of that, basically a bit of your story around the soccer card market.
Sure. So, I guess the first thing is I started playing, when I was young and wasn't very good. So I didn't play, late into my life or anything, but always had a love for the sport. And I grew up collecting, American football and baseball cards mainly from the time I was 5, which would be like 1980. So that tells you how old I am. Not quite as old as Al, but regardless. Anyway, so yeah, I've always been collecting, and then once I got out of college and had my first job, a friend and I decided to also open up a baseball card shop. So we had that going for about a decade. So I would always go to the national card show here in the U.S. and it just kind of clicked with me that soccer is something I always enjoyed, but I never really collected. So probably I want to say it's probably 12 to 14 years ago now. I just decided to start to focus on it, and I felt it was kind of aside from collecting, also as an investment, it just felt like a good decision because there's so many markets available, that people really don't collect soccer yet, but it's the global sport. So it just made a lot of sense that there's going to be a lot more people interested globally in collecting and a lot more Americans interested in soccer moving forward, because everybody plays soccer growing up. Like, it's just, regardless, it's just something to get out and kick a ball around at a minimum, and then so that's kind of what led me to start collecting soccer. I've always been kind of wired to collect vintage. So I started out, looking at Messi, Ronaldo, players like that, and I just slowly started moving further and further back in my collecting the years. It just kind of naturally happened.
Yep.
But back then it was a little bit of the Wild West, so we really didn't. The information we have now is like probably 50 times greater than it was once when I started collecting. So it's been fun to see the progress. And then COVID happened, and I was bored, so I figured I would throw a YouTube video on, and a few people interacted with it. And for years, when I was collecting vintage, it was very much, you didn't really cross paths with a lot of other collectors. So I just decided to start the Discord that we have, the Vintage Soccer Cards Discord. And
Bill, let me say one thing.
Sure.
Everyone that wants to learn about vintage, that's probably the best place we have in the soccer card market. So I will leave the link below the video, also on the description. And again, amazing place to interact with you, to interact with other collectors that share the same passion for vintage. But please, and also another shout out. You want to mention your YouTube channel. You have one of the best shows in the content space for soccer cards. You and Al, I believe, is the State of the Market, right? The name or something like that.
Yes.
I believe it's State of the Market.
Yeah, we just do it monthly, and yeah, Al and I have a fun time. It's just two guys. Like, for Al and I were two of the people that would cross paths back in the day, and we really never even had spoken. It was just a message here, a message there. So it's been really nice to do these shows and I mean, both of our Discords have grown quite a bit, and it's really cool to see so many people, becoming a part of the community and just talking soccer cards. And it's just something I figured I was going to get 20 to 30 people, and,
Yeah. No,
now
it's crazy.
now I mean, I know you have a lot, and I mean, it's just hard to wrap my head around, that many people being interested. And it's exciting to see. It's exciting for, if you're an investor moving forward, just because it seems like there's a lot more people, interested. And then it's also exciting as a collector because so many people are finding new things, and it's just incredible to learn about all these new, cards and stickers I've never seen before. And it's just been a lot of fun to see kind of the whole hobby grow. And yeah, so
And Bill,
that's kind of been my story.
the like I was saying, and you also agree with this. I think the first place to start to one of the best places to start to learn about vintage is probably your Discord. But I also believe your YouTube channel is amazing. I mean, you have done amazing content so far. That the state of the market, I think, it's amazing to learn about different releases. Al, I mean, everyone knows about Al at this point. Also, is such an amazing collector and have so much knowledge. But you guys make a great pair. I believe probably more people know about Al than you, but you
Sure.
are also a collector that people should follow because your knowledge is quite evident. And I think people will notice in this podcast.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, let's not, I'm not kidding myself to say that I'm at Al's level. And I mean, Al just is, I mean, he is so thorough in his collecting, and he's, his knowledge is just, there's not many people that can to match him. But yeah, we definitely, enjoy talking about it. And it's just a lot of fun. And that's probably 80% of the reason I'm even doing it, is just to enjoy myself and
Of course.
share a hobby with somebody, and with everybody. It's just it's a lot of fun, and it's just this is really my entertainment. It's not concerts, it's not anything else. This is the entertainment for me. So
I agree. I mean, I also feel the same on this YouTube channel, on my Discord. At the end of the day, you have to have a huge passion for this, otherwise, it's not worth it. Let's all be real about that.
very true.
So the question number 2, I think is an interesting one. What are the 3 international markets you like to collect the most in vintage or pre-war? Because vintage and pre-war basically is the same thing, but there is a differentiation there for collectors. But feel free if you prefer go pre-war or vintage, but the 3 international markets you like the most, and of course Portuguese needs to be one.
Uh-oh, I'm in trouble. So yeah, I would say that I am definitely, when I really started focusing on vintage, I kind of focused on the 50s and earlier. So I would say the majority of what I focus on is pre-war. So like I was really interested in the UK just because that's where the earliest cards and stickers, well, cards are. So I really wanted to start getting players that were kind of, if you look at, like, for example, I don't know, most other countries start in the 1920s, where you could get stuff from the 1800s in the UK. So that was really interesting to me, just to kind of get the some of the items of the, like, builders of the sport and everything like that.
Yep.
So most of the players I focus on from the UK are, I would say, 1910s and earlier, because that's really where soccer isn't represented too much in any of the other countries. So that was kind of where I focused to start. And then I kind of came across Spanish issues from the 20s. And I just find how the ornate nature of those it's just so beautiful. There's a lot of gold leaf and so many different, small regional issues. And I mean, I wish there was more, like, great players during that era, but I just find those issues to be so beautiful that I really enjoy collecting those. And then I would say that the third, and this is really no particular order, but Argentina is probably my third, just because I'm really intrigued by South American soccer history, and that Argentina is kind of where all the best players kind of congregated to play in the leagues there, and it's it's a whole different culture. So I got a couple in Europe, and it's fun to see the issues from a whole different region, and there's so many great players, and it's just interesting to hear the stories of players that started out there, went over to Italy or Spain to play, and it was just really kind of where I dug in, because right when I started, it was really difficult to get anything from South America, and so that was always a fun challenge to even find somebody there that could be like a personal shopper for you, and things like that. It was just so different than it is now to be able to acquire things. So it was just the fun, the search was just so fun that I kind of fell in love with Argentinian issues.
No, yeah, I mean, three great choices for sure. I don't have the same experience as you in vintage, even less in pre-war. I'm more a pre-modern collector, but I agree with your choices in general, because I look at the Thiago Alcantara, Zamora early cards, and they are so beautiful. It's tremendous the work Spanish releases did around that time, and of course UK. I mean, UK is so, the history is so rich around the sport that makes sense. About Argentina, I don't know as much, but I know Al also loves to collect Argentinian releases. I mean, we saw recently him getting I believe a couple of Di Stefano rookies, different releases, but still fairly early stuff. And things from Argentina, and I guess you also can give us some perspective on this, especially the really old stuff. They seem difficult to find, right? I have that idea.
Yeah, so it's just like anywhere where collecting maybe was or wasn't a big thing culturally, and it just feels like it wasn't really, and there was just so many different reasons, but a lot of items didn't survive over the years. People just, that was just something that somebody acquired, but then they might just throw it out or anything, and it's really difficult to find anything of decent condition. So just getting anything is a win. You'll see a lot of Al's items that Al has the ability to get the best item of whatever he's collecting, for the most part, and a lot of his South American items are PSA 1s or 2s. They're not, 7s or 8s. And so just to even get one is a win. And so it's not only it's condition scarce, but it's also just scarce in general. So that's kind of where the fun is. Like I bought a card off of Al that, I mean, if you looked at this, and it's so tattered, and there's creases, like 5 creases across the card, and I'm so happy to have it, so
what card?
I wish I had it in front of me so I could show you,
but share the player at least.
Oh, it's Carlos Pucel. Okay. So yeah, probably not many people know who it is, but he was a big time player in the 30s, and he kind of, La Máquina is a big team in Argentina, and he was kind of the person who started, the acquiring those players for the team, and so he's just somebody who always intrigued me, and it's a 1936 Leyes, and it just looks like an old tobacco card, but it's just so tattered that, but I love having it, and I'm happy to have it.
Actually, I have one question that is related with this one. Do you explore even smaller countries when it comes to pre-war, vintage also, but even specific pre-war like Uruguay, Chile? Do you explore those countries, or you focus mainly on the big ones, Brazil, Argentina?
Yeah, I mean, Uruguay is actually my probably. I didn't mention them just because it's a smaller country and there's just not as much available. But like the 20s Uruguay teams are just so interesting to me that I really dug into Uruguay back early on. So like Nasazi, Andrade, those two are the bigger stars, I guess you would say.
Yeah, legends.
So like those are players I definitely dug into. I try to acquire a lot of Uruguayan issues because it is definitely interesting to, and I appreciate it totally differently, right? Because it's just a smaller country that doesn't necessarily get as much notoriety. But I mean, the 20s, Uruguay was the team. I mean, they won two, the two Olympics, the 1924 and 1928 Olympics. They win the first World Cup. So they were pretty much dominant in that era. And so yeah, definitely have a focus of them as well. It's just that it's so much harder to get anything from there because their population is about 1/7 or 1/8 of the size of Argentina at the time. So
I believe even right, I could be saying something really wrong, but I believe even right now is around 3 million people. So it's a
so I'm probably
really,
even way off on the fraction. Yeah, I'm
yeah,
actually gonna pull that up while we're talking because
yeah. But is a super small country. But even the other countries, like actually, for example, in South America, Colombia, Chile, do you also explore them, or is too difficult to find stuff?
So I didn't really do a lot of digging into those countries because of just the players of interest weren't there for me
Yeah, makes
going back
sense.
that far. So I mean, once you move further up into like the 60s, 70s, it's more interesting to me. There's definitely players that I look for in those eras. But because I focus so much on pre-war, it just wasn't really the best players there would potentially have already been in Argentina. So
No, makes sense.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of where I didn't delve too much into that. But in Europe, I definitely looked, at more of the smaller countries.
Okay.
But again, with my interest being certain eras, it's you're kind of limited because there's only so many countries that really had an established leagues, in the 30s, 20s, 1910s. So um, I think maybe that's also part of the reason that interested me. And we'll get to this in another one of your questions, but you can only look at so much, without getting
No, for sure.
overwhelmed. And so, um, although I collect in a lot of areas, there wasn't, if you're a pre-war or a pre-modern collector, I mean, you have the whole world to collect from, and that's just overwhelming. So, um, I kind of limited my scope by, being interested in the pre-war.
No, makes a lot of sense to be honest with you. So the question number 3 is a bit speculative one, to be honest with you, but I think is a fun one. What player do you believe is still fairly cheap? Cheap is always relative, of course, but you think, you know what, maybe there is still some room to grow on this player in vintage or pre-war? Hey guys, quick pause on this one. First of all, hope you are enjoying the video. If that's the case, do not forget to leave a like, but let me share with you 2 things. The first is I have a Patreon community that is growing super fast. I put a lot of content there. If you joined right now, you pay around $10, but you have access to more than 100 exclusive videos. It's an amazing place to learn about the soccer card market, and you also support the channel. Link below the video and also in the comments. The second thing is my Discord server. We are more than 1,000 members. I'm gonna say it again, 1,000 members, and it's an amazing community, an amazing place to interact with me, to interact with other collectors, to learn and share about the soccer card market. Similar to Patreon, link will also be below the video. If $10 is a lot of money to you, don't feel pressure to join the Patreon. For me, it's not super relevant. Of course, I would love to see you there, but at least join the Discord. That's totally free and is an amazing place to learn about the soccer card market, like I said a couple of seconds ago. Now let's continue with this one, and I hope you have fun.
Yeah, so it's
Give me a
interesting.
name.
Okay, the name is Garincha
Okay.
from I feel like his values really jumped during COVID.
Oh
And
yeah.
then it feel like the prices were really high. There was just this big run on him, and where he was probably selling at a pretty big fraction of what Pele was selling for. And then it's amazing, but it just like looking at the auction prices recently, for the level of player he was, um, it just feels like it's almost overcorrected in this pricing. So if you can find anything that's even, it's not one of the most produced items of the era of his. I mean, we're seeing stuff from Brazil from the early 60s sell for $100, $200, and it just feels like that's a gross overcorrection to where his prices were a couple of years ago. So just as a bigger vintage name, I feel like he's kind of disconnected with some of the other prices recently. So I'm trying to think if there's anybody further back it's interesting because we kind of all these prices kind of go in waves, and I don't know if you see it in your Discord also, but people get really excited about certain things, and then you can kind of see all the prices
Oh
move
yeah.
up because the Discord kind of everybody's so excited about something that you almost see like this wave of like, and for example, in my Discord, it's been vintage Italy, so like all these Italian issues have shot up in price, and then then people get excited about something else. So then you kind of see Italy kind of dip a little bit in value. So it's pretty amazing, like these communities, how much influence they may have in prices. So it's kind of right now that's Garincha, but if everybody starts running with Garincha, it's not going to be him anymore. It's going to be,
No, I
somewhere
agree.
else. So it's really interesting to see how just the excitement of a collecting base can kind of move prices.
No, I totally agree with you, and I understand basically what you mean about basically a momentum around certain players, certain sets.
Exactly.
In my Discord, is what I notice from time to time is momentum around specific modern, around certain modern sets. All of a sudden, everyone is talking about them, and normally that also leads to more supply appearing, probably a correction in prices. So is actually quite fun to see. And I think as humans, we like to collect what other people also collect, and if we see a lot of people collecting, let's say, vintage pre-war Italy, of course, you may not even be totally aware of what's going on, but you think, what, this is actually quite nice. I don't even think it's people trying to manipulate stuff. It's basically something that really happens.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's just like Instagram. You get something and you post a card on Instagram, and you get a bunch of likes, and other people are like, "Oh, I really like that card. I'm gonna go look at that." And it's not 100%. It's not it's manipulation. It's just an interest and excitement level of a particular sector of collecting.
Yeah, and especially our market. I mean, there is so many releases that me and you may not even be aware that if we see it for the first time, I think, oh man, this now I would love to have one copy. I mean, it happens to me a lot. Specific more in vintage. In modern is a bit more easy to track stuff since we know the main releases. But and pre-modern happens also a bit, but in vintage is where I think a lot of stuff appears that I was not aware.
Sure, yeah, 100%. I mean, there's still things coming out from the 70s that I'm stunned. Like Al and I experienced this where we thought like Johan Cruyff rookie was 75 or 74, and then we buy that, and then all of a sudden it's 71, and then now it's 67, 1967. So in that regard, I mean, that was happening 7-8 years ago.
Yeah, I remember. I also believe was in one of your YouTube videos with him that you guys end up talking about Zico, that you guys also felt for, or at least I believe Al at least said that, but correct me if I'm wrong, Al.
That's exactly, and that happened recently. So
yeah,
I mean, within the last couple of years, we thought Zico was 1978, maybe 4 years ago.
The ping pong cards, right? Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's crazy, honestly.
Yeah, so that's just how soccer is. It's just like you can't, when you have, let's say back in the day, and I'm understating, but let's say I'm going to use United States just because in the United States there might have been 50 collectors of vintage and pre-war soccer, 10 years ago, and so you can only have so many. So people in other countries, in the country of issue, are probably aware of those, but for us to have access to those issues is very difficult when you only have 50 people looking. But now we have, between our two Discords, probably over 2,000 people, and so we have 2 channels where we can get all this information, from very
It's
easily.
crazy. It's crazy, honestly.
So 2,000 people look, and let's say only half of them are looking, right? Like we have 1,000 people really looking. It's just the information is so much easier to obtain, and yeah, it's cool to see. But at the same time, when you're dealing in vintage, that's a risk you take, because you might spend a lot of money on a really well graded 1976 Zico, and all of a sudden you're like, oh no, that's not, especially if you're looking for a rookie, which a lot of Americans are, then you could be in for a little bit of pain when you find out that that's not actually his rookie.
Yeah.
But that's just something that, like, we're a little more weathered and a little, we have thicker skin with that, just because we've experienced it so much over the last, 12, 14 years. So
yeah, I mean,
but yeah,
I talk a lot about timing the market versus timing the market, and you guys, you all, and other collectors, to be honest, are amazing examples of this. You guys have a lot of time in the market, and with that, there is a lot of experience, there is a lot of knowledge that you acquire over time. But still related with this, there is, for example, a couple of players in vintage that I feel like, and you probably agree with me, that there is a chance that their rookies is not the rookies we think about. For example, Yashin. I mean, if you look at his career, he was playing already for so many years. The rookies are what year? It's 50, 58, 59. The rookies we have right now, right? And also Hugo Sanchez. I believe Hugo Sanchez also has already.
It's the World Cup cards, the 1978. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you believe this is just, again, also a speculative question, but eventually the true step for them, or if there is a true step for them, will appear?
I think that those two are really perfect examples of it. I mean, because Hugo had so many years in Mexico, before 78. The one thing is, we always have, in theory, most players are going to have something, right, because of the World Cup. But you have to think, I mean, we're finding Mexico has been an interesting country because it's been really difficult to find items from there. And things are starting to come out more and more now. We're seeing more things from the 70s and even back into the 50s. So, yeah, I think that's Hugo just makes way too much sense that there's going to be something where everybody's going to be disappointed with their 1978 World Cup stickers. And then Yashin is definitely another one, and we keep saying that. It's just that, like you said, 58 is so late in his career, or later in his career, that you would think that something was produced in in Russia, or I guess it was the or the UK, or I mean the USSR, and so it's I mean,
makes sense.
That'll be really exciting when something's found about that. It's just really difficult to know if there really was much printed in the USSR back then, or the Soviet Union, because we just don't know much about the culture, and if that was really even a thing.
No, makes sense. I agree. I thought those two examples are nice ones, since they end up being already stars when we basically when the rookie for them appeared, even if he's not the true rookie. But yeah, I mean, that's one thing that sometimes scares me about vintage, specific for players that I feel I'm really not sure if this is the true rookie or not, even for a long time. And on this one, you probably also have great information. Probably even for Pelé, you guys, the old people collecting back in the day, thought that maybe 58 or even 59 was the rookie year for Pelé. Am I wrong about that, or the 57s are already well known?
No, you're correct. I mean, 58s were definitely the what I think the general collecting population believed. And I think some people started to do a little bit more digging into, could there have been something when he just started, and so, I think that's always been something. It's almost like you're a archaeologist hoping to find some proof.
Yeah.
Of something earlier than is already known. And so I think you're right. I think that most people believe, and the issue back then was we didn't even necessarily know the correct years for particular issues. Like there's like the Quiggle Pele. I mean, we thought that was a 58, and it ends up being closer to 60. And it just takes some work on the collector's end to kind of go through all of the stickers you can find for a particular issue, and then say, okay, this player, they're saying played for this team at this moment, and you kind of go through each of those players and you can kind of whittle it down and figure out kind of the range of years that sets from. And that's not necessarily 100% accurate either, because maybe this issue was made for multiple years. So it's particularly as you move further back in time, sometimes issues might last 3-4 years, and they just kind of build on it each season. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of daunting if you're going to be a new collector going into vintage or pre-war, and knowing that there's those risks, and also just the lack of information, and something pops up and you lose a ton of money. So and that kind of can lead into one of your other questions, but you can, it's just, you got to be careful when you start jumping into those eras. Kind of educate yourself a little bit more, and don't just say, I'm going to spend all my money right now on these cards. You kind of need to get a feel for the market before you and ask yourself how confident you are that that's definitely an early issue for that particular player. Because if you see that a player started in 1946 and we believe that the 1954 is his rookie, I mean, you have 8 years there for something to be found, and you could end up losing a lot of money if you're spending big on that 1954.
No, makes sense, and that's great advice. And the question number 4 is related basically with that. But let's say you are starting right now, imagine you are starting right now, but you could tell yourself, the new collector,
yeah,
an advice. I guess probably would be that, right? Be patient at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think that is the most important thing. Is you don't want to just jump in. I mean, we all do that, right? You see something you like, you go buy it, and then and you're like, well, you kind of reason with yourself, well, that's not that expensive for, like, if I compare it to another sport, or it's this old, and it's only going to cost me $50 or whatever.
And Bill, sometimes the thing that is even more difficult is the sentiment on the market is so nice that think, oh, everyone is buying, everything is going up. So yeah, this kind of makes sense. But there is always the other side of the coin. Maybe in 1 year the market is quite different, and we are seeing that right now.
Definitely. So you for example, like a good example is like the 1934 Stanley Matthews. I'm just going to use that as, he's considered one of the greats of the game from that era in England. And, it just makes sense that his rookie would be a valuable item. Well, the 30s just happen to have a lot of they produced a lot because it was all tobacco and everybody smoked back then. And so like that's the one I kind of think of to start out. And we just don't have the demand right now for soccer. I mean, maybe in 15 years it's a different story, but as of this
Exactly.
point, when everything else is going up, that's a little bit scarcer. That's kind of just been stagnant because if you go on eBay, you can see a dozen copies at any one time. And so that's something that you need to just be aware of if you're a new collector, is just because it's old and just because it's of a great player, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to jump and react to the market the same way that other cards are. The other thing is you just need to learn the market. And I think that the first thing I would do is kind of pay attention to all the different locations, different countries, different eras, all of that. Find what interests you and kind of keep a focus on that and become as educated as you can in that area. For example, Nils, Nick, he's very focused on France, and he's become a very knowledgeable collector of that. Now he kind of has an expertise in that, vintage French issues, in the mainly the 50s. And so like those are the kind of things that now he has this knowledge base that maybe other people don't have, and he can use that to his advantage in collecting. So just becoming an educated collector, and I would, maybe go where other people aren't looking, because that's going to be like the best way for you to find bargains. And otherwise, the main things like Pele's and things like that, everybody's aware of those. Everybody has a general base knowledge on those, so you don't really have an advantage. So if you're looking to kind of buy things at a discount, I would kind of look at the different countries and kind of say, okay, well, where is the Netherlands something that maybe a lot of people aren't focused on? Maybe we can look at vintage there, because there's not a lot that comes out of there. But if you become the person who's willing to dig in and put some work in, you might find some gems that us collectors don't know
Great
about.
point. No, great point for sure. I mean, I agree with that totally. Nils is an amazing example. I agree. I mean, he focused so much in the French stuff that, of course, he automatically becomes almost an expert on that market, on certain specific players. And this collection is growing beautiful, if you ask me, because you can see his evolution as a collector. You can even see his knowledge is getting deeper, because he now finds stuff that is more difficult to find. So I thought was a really nice example. This question was for you, but I also would love to share my perspective on this one. But it's very similar to yours. To be fair, I think being patient is the biggest skill people can have when it comes to collecting. Being patient and having a stable personality, if that makes sense. Don't get too, just because your card is up 2x or 3x, don't think the next one you will buy will follow the same trend or the same logic. And still related with this, people should put time in the market. Look at the knowledge you are showing all of us today. I mean, you did not learn this one year ago. This is a lot of years in the making, if that makes sense. So I would say your advice is very similar to mine, and I fully agree. The last one. No, feel free.
Just to follow up on that. I mean, when you mentioned patience, that is, if you're going to get into vintage in particular, patience is so important, because it isn't like stuff from the 90s on forward, because a lot of the players, you're really betting on more people being interested in collecting vintage soccer cards. That's what's going to drive the value of things. It's not like if you're collecting modern, where you're seeing players on the pitch and they're performing, and that's driving the values. So, you maybe bought, I don't know, Camaviga, and he's doing incredibly, and his prices go up. So now you've made money, or he's not performing, and you lose some money. It's much more of a stock market in that regards. Whereas like if you're getting into vintage, there's nothing really changing that value aside from more people being interested in them. So the speed of return is totally different.
Yeah.
And so you just need to be aware of that if you're going into vintage or pre-war. All you're doing is really betting on more people being more interested in those items moving forward. And if you're investing, if you're collecting, it's a whole different story. But if you are interested in the value of what you're buying, that's definitely something that you need to be aware of, that what we saw during COVID is not, is not what vintage and pre-war typically is like.
Yeah, and I actually, that's a good point, because I actually feel like some people got the wrong idea at the time, that even vintage can go up 5x, 10x all of a sudden. And that was a very special time in the market. Let's be real. Everything went up, not just soccer cards. I mean, NBA, Pokemon cards, everything was going crazy. The difficult part was buying something that was going down. That was the real skill around that time. But yeah, right now is a much slower game. But slow gains, as long they are consistent, they give you great perspective for the future. But again, modern is totally different. Yeah, if Haaland or other kid scores an hat-trick, there is a scenario that certain cards most likely will go up. But even that is getting tricky nowadays, because I also feel there is we are still seeing some market adaptation from that time, the COVID situation, and there is a lot of people leaving the market. I think it's fair to say that. But the people that is entering right now, they'll probably stay for a long time, because if you are entering when cards are going down, that's kind of a good sign in terms of you being a collector or a flipper. Of course, we also need flippers. We also need momentum investors, if that makes sense. But I also think we are going to see a more stable market in the next 2-3 years, and that's a great thing for collectors. The final question, Bill, and great stuff so far. Is your hot take on unpopular opinion about the soccer card market, about the hobby in general? Is up to you.
Yeah, I'm always bad at these, so I'm not sure of what a controversial take is, because I mean most of my takes I share. So I mean, I guess my my biggest take is that like I'm bullish on soccer in general, but overall the card market or sports cards I am bearish on. Like I feel like sport is dying to a point, particularly in the United States. I feel like people are less interested in sports in general compared to where they were maybe 20 years ago.
Okay.
So I feel like there's this very interesting, shift right now. And I'm like baseball, for example, is kind of, I consider it a dying sport. Like there's just people are less interested in it, watching it. And, young 20-year-olds that I speak to don't even watch sports. Many of them, way less than what it was. Like I would say 9 out of 10 20-year-old men cared about all the sports that I was around. And now it feels like it's 5 out of 10. And so I feel like there's a big concern moving forward just in sports collectibles in general. So what's going to happen in 30 years when, they're 50 years old? And are they really going to be interested in buying our collectibles that we have right now? So it's kind of I feel like soccer is a little bit more buffered because it's such a global sport, but I feel like a lot of the other sports that are more national centric, may not be what we see they are right now. So I'm a little, with that being the case, I mean, is collecting of soccer cards even going to be a thing 30, 40, 50 years down the road? And that's something I kind of battle in my brain every time I buy something. But I still believe that the next 20 years, I'm pretty confident that soccer is fine. But I'm worried, is it going to, in 50 years, is soccer collecting going to be what we see or what we think it'll be? So, um, yeah, I don't know if I've shared that too much, but it's one of those things that's my brain is always kind of trying to calibrate. Do I really want to put into some, buy this big card that, how long do I intend to hold it? Those kind of questions I ask pretty much anytime I spend,
No,
good money on something.
I love it. I mean, I think it's a very what you said makes sense. I also have that feeling. I mean, even myself, when I was a kid, sports are the main force of entertainment for, especially for men. And nowadays, and I have a brother that is quite younger than me. And he loves to watch, for example, esports. Something that I never grew up watching, and he also loves to watch live streams, stuff like that. That goes into basically your hot take that there is different forms of entertainment, and the passion gets a bit split between multiple stuff. And I also think countries that are very well developed, if that makes sense, is where you see that being more evident. I think soccer is a bit more protected. Basically, I'm repeating what you said, but I totally agree because of the international success that the sport have in other countries. Because you also have to put in perspective, we have more people nowadays than we had 20 years ago. But but the reason we have so many people is actually from third world countries and stuff like that. That soccer does very well there. So I think your take is honestly quite good and totally possible, because you probably grew up loving baseball or American football, and you are already seeing a shift on that, I would assume.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely it. The focus is just drawn so many different ways. Like when I was growing up, we had maybe 5 channels on television. It was even, I think I was 8 years old before we got cable. So it was, there was very few options. So you were excited when they had any sort of sport on television. And I mean, to be fair, most of the time was spent outside playing the sports. And that's just a whole different dynamic now with young people. There's so many things drawing their attention, and they can figure out what interests them, and they can focus on that. And it's just, sport is kind of getting watered down a little bit that way.
No, I agree.
But yeah,
I had someone in the past in the podcast that shared, I would say, almost a similar hot take to you. Basically, that he believes that digital products will be the thing that people will collect. And some people end up disagreeing, but honestly, who knows? I don't think it's crazy. I mean, this type of stuff never seems too evident to us, but probably seems much more evident to the new generation. The same thing with NFTs. I'm honest, I don't understand that stuff that well. I think I don't get the collecting something digital. For me is basically a line of code that is there, and I like the physical item.
Right.
But maybe a kid with 16 years old, understands that well, and it is what it is, basically. So you see people spending so much money in this Fortnite, CSGO skins or something like that, that if they are spending there, they probably find that something worth collecting, worth having. So.
Yep, that's exactly it. And that's almost probably what we need to focus on, is what are the younger people doing. If you always want to stay ahead of the game, as to like, because it kind of goes in waves, where, okay, the 40 to 50-year-old people, what are they going to spend their money on for nostalgia? So like for me, it's sport. So, and I collected when I was a kid, and I enjoy collecting still. I mean, granted, I never stopped, but for people my age now, they remember collecting cards. So that's what they did during this COVID boom, and all of that. And just now they have more discretionary income. Where are they spending it? So, and looking at like 30-year-olds now, what did they collect 15 years ago? And that maybe that's likely that's what they're going to collect when they're 45 years old. So in 15 years, that might be, what
Bill,
you should be, if that's what your goal is, of staying ahead of the game and investing. Maybe that's.
Bill, imagine this. If you said, and I would say, I'm sure that you would agree with this one. If you said to someone, let's say 10 years ago, that Pokemon will be the thing that PSA grades the most, people would not believe it. No, more than baseball cards. That's impossible. And Pokemon is the main market on PSA nowadays. It's crazy. So if people don't believe it, just put Pokemon in perspective or the other TCGs. And I also believe that's already almost a shift. Pokemon will never be bigger than American football or baseball, but it is, and will that stay? That's a different conversation to another day. Maybe there is still a lot of hype around that. But we saw a shift in terms of almost mentality. I mean, sports are the biggest thing. Well, maybe an anime from Japan can actually take that. Is honestly fascinating to think about, and trying to predict this type of stuff is, I would say, almost impossible. But if you can do it, you can actually be very ahead of the market. So.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I'd rather do something I know and enjoy than try to find what the next thing is. So, the loss in profits is gained in entertainment on my end, personally, at least. But it's definitely something to think about. And the anime stuff is probably, that would be what I'd be putting my money on if I were going to do that. But it's pretty interesting to think about. And so I'll just close my head and not think about it, and just do my soccer, which I'm really happy doing.
No, Bill, I think is everything for today. Thank you so much for accepting the invite once again. If you have any final thoughts, feel free, or otherwise we can end the podcast.
Okay, I appreciate the invite. This was a lot of fun. Always enjoy talking soccer and the cards and stickers, and if any of you are interested in vintage, come on by the Discord, or hit up any of the social medias, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'll be happy to answer. And thank you so much again for the invite.
No problem. So check both links. Actually, not both. There will be a lot of links. His channel, his Discord, all my social media. I will leave everything on the comments and also on the descriptions. If you end up enjoying this episode, consider to leave a like. And see you guys next time. Bye.